In what looks like a deadly fight over deck chairs on the sinking Titanic, Donald Trump and Alex Soros are now in a state of open warfare against each other. It is safe to say that Soros, Barack Obama and their entire faction will lose the war. However, this will not stop the fact that the corporation owes its people $200 trillion and the rest of the world $53.4 trillion, and therefore will not be able to continue to exist as it is. Meanwhile, Israel is about to be invaded by Egypt and Turkey. In any case, while the US public was distracted by this struggle, the US military, the Russians, the British Empire and Asian secret societies agreed at the extraordinary Bilderberg Forum, as well as at US Chinese military meetings over the weekend, to create an organization for planning the future. They also agreed that the U.S. corporation would be replaced by the United States of North America. Anyway, let's start with the US political theater, as it shows that the political struggle between the US and the West is approaching a kind of climax. Sources in the US Space Force now tell us that Commander-in-Chief Donald Trump is still at the military base in Cheyenne. They claim that he controls the US nuclear arsenal. This is evidenced by the fact that when the so-called US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin was hospitalized with cancer in January, no one in the Biden administration knew about it. If Biden had controlled the U.S. nuclear arsenal, it would have been impossible. Anyway, Space Force sources say the real Trump is now using two different Trump avatars. One of them is located in Mar-a-Lago and is campaigning against Joe Biden. The other is in New York and is involved in all the legal drama there. We would appreciate it if readers in New York and Florida could investigate these allegations. The source also claims that Biden is also being controlled by white hats and is being ordered to deliberately act in a way that helps wake up more sheep. According to this source, allowing Trump to be convicted as a criminal for minor offenses while people who oppose him get away with torturing people is part of a psychological operation designed to wake up the still sleeping part of the population. Of course, it seems to have such an effect, boosting Trump's popularity and causing a huge influx of donations. The drama will continue. Alex Soros has now taken control of the leftist propaganda machine and is fighting to avenge the execution of his father George Soros by Donald Trump. He demonstrated this when he tweeted to his servants that Democrats should address Trump as a convicted felon at every opportunity. The key to success is repetition. This is straight out of the textbook of the head of Nazi propaganda, Joseph Goebbels. George Soros' son reveals the next propaganda weapon aimed at the American people. The White Hat Alliance responded with a flurry of leaks about George Soros and the evil he is responsible for. In 1993, Soros recommended that NATO launch a war against Russia using the population of Eastern Europe. Soros is behind the global invasion of illegal immigrants. Elon Musk says that George Soros fundamentally hates humanity and that he does things that undermine the fabric of civilization. George Soros financed the revolution in Ukraine and many other color revolutions. Leaked documents from his Open Society Foundation explain how he controlled elections and foreign governments in Europe and other countries. His plan was to destroy Europe with his open borders, as well as destroy Europe and the United States. It is Soros and his handlers from the Hazar Group who pay all foreigners of military age to flood Europe and the United States. The alliance also published previously hidden emails about Barack Obama, including the following: a little boy of 5 years old. He will make an ideal president. He will arrive from Romania on Tuesday. I'm sure the president will be pleased. Exposing the torture of people is why the leaders of the Khazars are literally fighting for their lives. Robert De Niro is a prime example of this. He's scared shitless of what awaits him and his buddies, says a CIA source. According to the BBC, De Niro was detained and interrogated by French authorities in 1998 after he was found in a small black book and a client list of Jean-Pierre Bourgeois, the head of an international human trafficking operation. The case revealed the brutal methods used to capture young women. That's why 2 months ago he said that if Trump wins, he will come looking for me. Now he says the government will disappear from the face of the earth if Trump is re-elected President of the United States. Asian secret societies will play an important role in this. A large group with tens of millions of members and hundreds of thousands of professional killers has come under new leadership. Now this group says they will do this to get justice for the 500,000 Japanese killed since 2021. The Japanese underworld also supports this. The main Yakuza bosses met last week with representatives of the Western White Hats and agreed to cooperate in the worldwide defeat of the Hazar group. They promised to take action on the received list of hundreds of names. U.S. Ambassador Rahm Emanuel and Richard Armitage are among those under active attack, according to underworld sources. According to Japanese right-wing extremists who were offered bribes, as a sign of desperation, the U.S. Embassy is launching a major bribery scam to maintain control over Japan. Under this system, Japan will purchase American weapons, and the Japanese side will receive a refund of 60% of the cost of weapons. The remaining 40% will go over to the U.S. side. In other words, it's laundering the Fed's money with expensive guns to hire bodyguards. It's not going to work. In a sign that the current Japanese government is doomed, tens of thousands of Japanese demonstrated in front of the Ministry of Health and Social Welfare on May 31st, accusing them of mass casualties. According to secret society sources, Asian societies will also remove all Khazarian-affiliated or compromised politicians in South Korea, Taiwan, China, and other countries. Asians are also confident that even without an attack, the entire Hazar control network will collapse. The USA is an example of this. An indication of how desperate the situation is that Mexico has deported 240,000 economic refugees from the United States in the last 60 days. Think about it. Americans are fleeing to Mexico. Sources in the Mexican government say that American refugees are causing inflation by spending American dollars created out of thin air to buy real things. These dollars are no longer accepted by the rest of the world, only Canada and Mexico. They are also used to bring the stock market to a hallucinatory level. Recall that U.S. dollars printed in the United States are now isolated from the $53.4 trillion held by the rest of the world. According to the FSB of Russia and other sources, these dollars will soon be converted into the BRICS currency. Biden's fund money is also causing problems in Canada. 1 in 4 Canadians does not have enough food, and the Canadian food bank system is on the verge of collapse. Since Canada is one of the largest food exporters in the world, this is a clear sign that Justin Trudeau's government is incompetent. It's only a matter of time before the whole system collapses. Soon, 500 to 1,000 smaller banks are likely to disappear due to insolvency or consolidation, says Scott Reckler, CEO of RXR. As we have shown before, even large banks are de facto insolvent, as their bonds and loans have lost 50% of their value, and commercial real estate prices have evaporated. Now they're all frozen like deer in the headlights, but it's only a matter of time before the vicious cycle of sales blows up the whole system. The rest of the world has promised to provide funding to the Republic of North America to replace the current corrupt and incompetent regimes in the United States and Canada, as soon as the crash happens. The trigger for the collapse is likely to be the fall of this regime that currently exists in Israel. Israel's days are definitely numbered. Turkish President Recep Erdogan called for arms, saying, Israel poses a threat not only to the Gaza Strip, but also to all mankind. He adds, no state can be safe as long as Israel does not comply with international law and does not feel bound by international law. Both Turkey and Egypt have pledged to support the International Court of Justice's case on the Israeli genocide. To make matters worse, Israel has just violated the Israeli peace agreement with Egypt by taking control of the Rafah-Egypt border post without crossing the Gaza Strip by invading the Philadelphia corridor. However, in Cairo, it was immediately assumed that Tel Aviv had declared war on him. If Egypt defends itself, a regional war will follow, which Israel will not be able to win, says French journalist Thierry Meisson. Israeli General Yitzhak Brik says that the Egyptian army is one of the most powerful in the Middle East and has about 4,000 tanks, including 2,000 modern ones, as well as powerful ships and military aircraft. Breaking the peace with the Egyptians would be a disaster for Israel. Security in all respects, and in the event of a conflict, Israel will have no choice but to pray to God. However, Mossad sources say that before this happens, Israel plans to stage a major Black Swan event to distract the world's attention later this month. This is a sign of desperation, as Israel is now also under a complete land and sea blockade. In the latter case, the Yemeni Houthis claim to have struck and damaged, and possibly even sunk, an American aircraft carrier. There is an attempt at novelty in this, but military experts have long said that US aircraft carriers are militarily outdated and are not protected from hypersonic missiles. Also, according to the Turks, last week the Russians struck the Yavorovsky test site in western Ukraine with a hypersonic Dagger missile, killing at least 300 people, including NATO troops. Pentagon sources say the attacks could have been a response to recent missile strikes on Russia. This is a sign that Russia will not use the provocations of the Khazars to unleash a nuclear war, but instead will take retaliatory measures that will cause damage but will not start a full-scale war. The Russians have also just captured another American Patriot missile system and decided to hand it over to China. Since the US has sold many Patriot missiles for a lot of money to Japan, South Korea and Taiwan, this will cause damage. The Russians are also interested in ending trade between Europe and Asia through the Middle East. The blockade of the Red Sea by the Houthis has made Russia's northern sea route attractive to the desperate West. Russian officials and the media have been saying for years that the 600 kilometers long northern sea route is the shortest sea route between Europe and Asia and can shorten the distance by 8,000 kilometers or more and reduce transport time by 40 to 60% compared to traditional Europe. Asia leads through the now murky waters of the Middle East. Almost the entire Arctic part of the route passes through Russian waters. The Russians keep it open with the help of a fleet of icebreakers and hope to receive a transit fee. There are also more and more Russians in Africa. The latest development was the appearance of Wagner director Yevgeny Prigozhin in the Central African Republic and Chad. Sources in the FSB of Russia claim that Prigozhin was not actually killed last year, as reported in the world media. It seems that Wagner has just taken the French gold, diamonds, uranium and other resources of these countries. Meanwhile, in several countries, American troops are being forced out of Niger, and Joe Biden is leaving an American airbase worth $100 million to the pro-Russian regime. We also suspect, but cannot prove, Russia's involvement in the recent riots in the French territory of New Caledonia. The main source of New Caledonia's wealth is the extraction of nickel, which is vital for the production of electric vehicles. Until legal changes concealing ownership were passed in 1988, the sector was completely controlled by the Rothschilds, former employers of Emmanuel Macron. This nickel metal, issued by SLN in the 1960s, has images of French, Dutch and Greek coins on one side and the company logo on the other. The loss of colonial resources is one of the reasons why Standard & Poor's has just downgraded France's credit rating from A to A. This helps explain why French President Emmanuel Macron Rothschild is trying so hard to push NATO into war with Russia. However, the Germans have none of this because they are too busy rebuilding the German Empire in Eastern Europe. Polish intelligence sources tell us that in the first weeks of his tenure, German agent and Polish President Donald Tusk illegally seized control of public media and the prosecutor's office. He also cancelled or postponed all Polish investment projects that reduced the country's dependence on Germany. The current Polish government plans to transfer the remnants of Polish sovereignty to Germany, the sources said. The resurgent German Empire is also on its way to ensuring energy independence. The German cabinet on Wednesday approved a bill to accelerate the construction of hydrogen infrastructure, import and production facilities, as Berlin relies on fuel that will help decarbonize Europe's largest economy, government sources said. Interest, which means that the authorities will give this priority during the approval process. Sources in MI6 report that the Germans are also trying to cancel Brexit and regain control of Britain. The sudden resignation of British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and his suicidal approach to the election campaign seem to be aimed at handing over control to Labour leader Keir Starmer. Starmer does not defend anything and just says what he is told, even if it completely contradicts what he said before. As a sign of who his real bosses were, when he was given the choice between Westminster and Davos, his answer was unequivocal: Davos. MI6 sources say Starmer will seek 2 terms, approaching the EU in the first term and then rejoining in the second, risking civil war. Decapitation of German businesses in the UK is more likely. When the White Hat Alliance presented the award to Chief Minister Simon Keyes, Keyes contacted MI6 and informed them that the problem was the former head of MI6, John Scarlett. When Scarlett was presented with the prize money, he turned around and said that the problem was with the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. German media reports that von der Leyen is a deeply corrupt politician. The latest of many scandals surrounding her is that she used her influence to help the Russian company Krasny Oktyabr avoid sanctions imposed by the European Union after the start of the Russian special operation in Ukraine. Krasny Oktyabr produces 40% of stainless steel in Russia and supplies it to the German automotive industry. In any case, the White Hats Alliance has put a bounty on her head. Not because it helps Germany, but because the Geneva International Peace Research Institute (JEPRI) has accused European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen of complicity in war crimes and crimes against humanity committed by Israel against Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. JEPRI's complaint was filed against the head of the European Commission at the International Criminal Court (ICC) on May 22. The complaint, supported by various human rights groups and prominent academics and experts in the field of international criminal law, calls on the ICC prosecutor to launch an investigation based on information against von der Leyen. Behind the scenes, the Davos faction behind von der Leyen is trying to capitulate. This was evident from the discussions at the just concluded Bilderberg Club conference in Spain. The reason is that after 2 years of negotiations, the World Health Organization's efforts to conclude a global pandemic treaty have failed. Here you can watch how Director General Tedros announced the failure of the agreements on combating the pandemic. Goodbye, Tedros. You and your friends have lost. Military courts will catch you soon enough, a CIA source comments. Longtime Bilderberg reporter Daniel Estulin tells Alex Jones about some of the things discussed at the last Bilderberg tournament. He says that the elite has a plan for total control over humanity through technological control. The Bilderbergers dream of creating a new artificial human. Harari and Soros talked about this. You create an artificial uterus and incubate it the same way you hatch chickens. You have artificial insemination, and you are genetically shortening the pregnancy period. Then you can make as many human robots with limited consciousness as you need, he says. However, Estulin says that because of the failure of this plan, the elite gathered there were scared and did not know what to do next. One of the reasons we see opposition to Trump is because they know that if Trump wins, many of them will be eliminated and most of them will end up in jail, so they say it's either them or us, he notes. Estulin also says, what we are seeing now has only happened twice in the last 2,000 years. The first occurred around the 4th and 6th centuries when the Roman Empire collapsed and feudalism arose. And then, about 1,000 years later, between the 16th and 17th centuries, when feudalism collapsed and was replaced by modern capitalism, which today in its current form is on its deathbed, so the problem is that they don't know what to replace it with. There is no one in the West who can explain what the model will look like. However, the fact is that our own sources in the secret societies of Asia, the Pentagon, the Russian FSB, MI6, etc., know what it will look like. They all say that a decision has been made to replace the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council with a council representing 7 regions. It was also decided to create a future planning organization that will take over the functional parts of the BIS, the World Bank, the IMF, etc. As Estulin, a conspiracy theorist, notes, the director of the Central Bank of the Russian Federation works directly for the IMF. The IMF has agreed to the new plan, several sources say, including the head of MI6. A similar agreement was reached at a meeting in Shangri-La in Singapore last week between military delegates from 45 countries, Pentagon sources said. But first, it is necessary to complete the current corrupt system so that it collapses. That's why we're definitely approaching a summer full of discontent.